Start them, Pat.
Are we going to start on this end?
Yeah,
Every time?
probably.
I loved it. I loved high school. That was one of my favorite things. I mean, I didn't dread going to school. We were all buddies, active in, all the activities and cheerleading and mascot for the for the Gators. And I love it. It's so different from how it is today with the kids. I taught school for 40 years, and we're all school teachers. So we've seen major changes. And I noticed back then, when we were in school, there was kind of a distance between teachers and students, where now, I know with my children growing up and going through high school, they bonded with the teachers more. Now, there were some that we had that really bonded with us, but there was still that kind of distant, but respect.
Yeah, a greater gap of respect
Yeah.
than others. In talking before, I don't understand why some folks did want to graduate early, because we did have such a fun time with each other. Yeah, there was the usual, you got to study for the test, you got to do different things, but I mean, school was your social world. It was a small town, and the school was a huge part of it. So I would not have wanted to have left early. How about you, Noni?
Oh, wow. I loved it. We felt safe, since it was such a small school compared to the larger schools of today, everyone more or less knew everybody, and everybody was really close. And
Yeah, just like with us having different classes, we were all still, from 7th grade on, we were together the whole time. So
yeah, even though Sara Ann was a year behind us.
there's that birthday gap.
Yeah.
I mean, we're 5 weeks apart in age, but she was a year ahead. And even though we didn't all go to the same elementary, because she went to the parochial school, I went to Bynum, and you
went to
you were,
junior high.
No, but where were you at elementary?
Bynum.
Okay. You don't know people in other grades as much in elementary school, but in middle school and high school, or junior high and high school, everything just kind of ran together because of the exploratory classes and such.
All the kids that came from like Maryville and different places.
Maryville, Bynum, McDonald, and Kensington.
Right. We all kind of joined in the junior high, Winyah Junior High, which was beside the high school. And so met lots of people through, and still friends with them. And as you can see, we graduated in 73 and 74, and I mean, 50 years ago.
Yeah,
and
we're having our
still-
50-year reunion this year
Yeah.
in class of 73.
And we still love each other, and stay in touch.
We've come full circle. All three of us are living here again, and
All three left,
yeah,
stayed away for many years, and all three came back.
and we all were school teachers. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of interesting too. We ended up teaching school, all three of us.
Sports activities, because that's where we were all always together, truly together. Classes sometimes not as much because of coursework and scheduling, but sports activities, always.
Anyway, Pat and I were cheerleaders, and Sara Ann, tell them about how you were involved.
that I was clearly never going to be the cheerleader type. Never. And ironically, though, I was most school spirited.
Yes,
but
you were.
It was, it's kind of like, well, I'm not going to be on that level, so what do I do? Well, Doug Allen, Dr. Allen, he asked me freshman year to keep the scorebook for basketball. So that put us all together for at least all through basketball season, because I went to every game. They were at every game. We traveled together on the bus to and from games. And then one of my classmates, Sheila Armstrong, and I were joking around one summer and said, we don't have a mascot. All these other bigger schools have mascots. And she said, why don't we make a mascot? And we cut out material and fashioned the weirdest looking mascot you ever saw, but it was fun.
It was cute.
And the students liked it. So
guess
that got
who it-
me into the
guess who
football
it
games
was?
with
Marion
them.
Warren.
So, but I didn't tell anybody for quite a few games. That was kind of the thing. You can't tell anybody who this is. But it was fun. Yeah. It was fun.
And one of the things that we were talking about that's different today, that was different, we had student bus drivers, students that drove our buses to ball games and different activities, which they would never do that today.
Never.
No.
Can you imagine a
Liability.
16-year-old driving a school bus? No.
Full of a football team or basketball team.
And the cheerleaders and the rest of us all up front. I'm surprised Chip didn't run off the road.
But another thing that was very special was the junior senior, which we didn't call it a prom, we called it the junior senior. And that was a big deal. We raised money for that throughout the whole school year, and the juniors put on the dance for the seniors. And at the time, Winyah, when did the new gym, when was the new gym?
The new gym was open to be used in 1970. And so that freed
and it was across the
up-
street.
Yeah, it was across the street, and that freed up the main gym, which is when you came in the triple doors into the main entrance into the school. The gym was straight ahead. You went to the right for the administrative offices, you went to the left for the guidance offices, and the old gym was right there. It freed up because you had a couple of PE teachers, and some used the gym across the street, and you would dress over there, and then you would come back for certain activities.
But we totally took it over and, just transformed the entire gym. I remember that. We were trying to figure out what the themes were, but all I remember is we had a big swimming pool, one of those big plastic pools, and we transformed it into a moat. We made like a bridge over it. I remember that. And we think it might have been Tropical Paradise.
So I think that sounds
The one
right.
that we did, the one that we did for you guys was Hawaii was the theme, and then I don't remember. Oh, I know what y'all's. Well, y'all's was the Paris one, and so that was going over the same.
But we had total control, the kids did, and ownership of this dance. And, today the kids don't even have their
They're not themed.
proms even at their school. They go somewhere off campus, and it's just kind of takes away the...
And do they decorate? I mean, do they? I don't even know if they decorate. I know they wear.
But anyway, those were the good old days.
It was fun. It was a lot of. You could not leave once you got there. You were not to leave, and if you left, you could not come back. To kind of tamp down on anything that you weren't supposed to be doing. So.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes, that's true. We don't, and I don't think any of us remember the scores
No.
of any
No,
of
our
them.
rival was Conway Tigers. I played basketball. Noni and I were cheerleaders together, and Sara Ann was the mascot.
Well, I was more so the scorekeeper.
And
for
the scorekeeper.
For
The
basketball.
For basketball. But we had all the major activities. We had softball, and there was track, and there was
But there was
football.
not as much for girls at
Right.
that time. It was primarily girls basketball and track and field events, because
and there was softball. Didn't we have softball? No.
no, the boys had baseball,
Okay.
but track and field events and basketball were pretty much it for the girls, if you weren't a cheerleader. So there was not as much available.
But we had the best time going through our annuals, and most of the time under pictures in your annual, when you get your annual, you just want somebody to sign it, will you sign my annual, blah, blah, blah. And so Noni was reading some of the captions under things that I didn't even remember happened in high school, and I thought that was neat,
There was a lot of school spirit. We had
It was strong spirit.
we had a lot of pep rallies. I think we had pep rallies every
You had a pep rally every Friday. for
Every
the football
Friday.
season.
and we
And-
made signs.
and I don't know if they do that in
posters.
high schools now. I know in middle schools you didn't.
During football, I think they do, because the year that I was teaching in middle school attached to a high school, football season was the dreaded. When you're older and you're teaching there, it's like, where are my earplugs? I've got to go to the pep rally. But when it was us, it was which class can make the most noise.
And then, like Pat said, the Conway Tigers were our big rivals. And we would always take a stuffed tiger, and I don't know who climbed up on the roof, but they would climb up
No,
on.
it was from the library windows. Remember, the library was directly over the entrance.
I don't know. It was way up in the big triangle part of the.
That's the junior.
They
high
had
building.
they had to climb on the roof to hang that tiger from the roof because it was way up on the top.
In the front of the building.
Oh,
And then
yeah,
we
you're
had
right.
tiger burns where we would have big bonfires behind the school and we would burn the tiger. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and homecoming parades and
Oh yeah.
just a lot of school spirit.
Lots of fundraisers,
Yeah, I can remember being really sad graduating. I was going to, I'm going to miss this so much.
Everybody's going their
We're
separate
blessed.
ways, different colleges, and it
Whatever
was-
activities
yeah.
they were gonna, whether they were going to work or whatever. And in fact, well, originally you two went to separate colleges. We technically all went to 3 different colleges, but these two ended up at the same college.
Yeah.
So,
Carolina, USC.
College of Charleston. But
I
you
was at
started-
Carolina.
But you started at Columbia College and then
Yeah, 1
transferred.
year and transferred. And then Pat and I ended up living in the same dorm for 2 years?
Yeah, yeah.
And joined the same sorority. So we've been together, known each
Yeah.
other, and stayed friends for a very long time. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We had a good bond.
Yeah.
We were born 5 weeks, 1 block apart, and we have been friends ever since.
I would, in the morning, Daddy would take me and drop me off, but in the afternoon, I would walk home because I lived right on Prince Street, right over here. And I can remember being so jealous of the people that rode buses because I
wanted to ride a
Oh,
bus,
I
too.
wanted to be on those buses. And, you always
that was
want
a
what you
social
don't
event.
have, But, yeah, we would walk home every day. And
I got dropped off, and A lot of times I would walk to grandmama's. My grandmother lived on High Market Street, same as the school. So it wasn't but around 6, 7 blocks. But then later, Pat and I drove.
Some of us had cars.
Well, excuse me, I had a hand-me-down car.
Oh,
and it was
mine were hand-me-downs too.
Sarah Ann's dad owned a car dealership in town.
So I worked for him after
Yeah.
school. That was the condition that I got a car.
And Pat inherited her big brother's
Yeah,
Volkswagen Beetle.
that had been painted blue with a brush. And it had a big wide, I mean, it was
Racing
wide.
stripe.
Racing stripe that went all the way over it, you know, so if I came down the road, or all of us came down the road, you knew it was us. And I even had a sunroof top. It was one of these ones that you had a handle, a crank, and
Accordioned back.
you do like this and you slide it back. So we, you know, the ones in the back seat would hang out the front, and it also had a reserve tank. And my particular, you had one too, didn't
Yep.
Mine-
One of the many that I drove because mine were constantly getting changed out.
But mine wouldn't go unless it was on the reserve. It had a little, on the floorboard, it had a little crank, and it had to be on the reserve, or it would go, boom, boom, boom. So our big thing on Sundays was to cut the whistling pig. We rode
Circle
the
town,
pig, we
over
rode
and
through
over
town, we
and
went
over
through
again.
around the boulevard, and you know, we just waved to everybody. That was our fun, you know. We didn't have all this technology and stuff and
Well, a
cell
Volkswagen
phones.
would get almost 50 miles to the gallon,
Yeah.
and considering gas was like 30 cents a gallon, you weren't burning a whole lot of money.
I would get 50 cents on Sunday for the Volkswagen to go, and we would ride all day, ride over to the beach. And it was funny because one day I'm riding down Church Street and the car starts going, boom, boom, boom. And one of our other real dear friends that we wish was here, Kim, every time she got in my Volkswagen, she'd take her foot and she'd kick that reserve off, and I'd go, Kim. And one particular time, I'm sorry, but this was funny. We were turning from Broad Street left onto Church Street, and she had done that. And so I'm trying to get the car to go, and it was an old car. It was a 1960 Volkswagen. And all of a sudden, the door opens, and Kim is going out where the old armory used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Kim's going
Right
out, and
down the
she's holding
street.
on, help! And I'm trying to get the car to go. So I'm grabbing her. So I grabbed her by her waist and pulled her back in, and I said, you have got to stop doing this. But the car door opened. It was so funny.
I never knew what car I was going to have. Daddy would just trade them out and say, drive this for a while. Then I'd get a call, or I'd go into work after school, and it's like, no, you don't have that car anymore because I've got a sale for it, and you're going to now drive this. So there were some I loved, and there were some that,
Don't put me in it.
well, I just have to mess them up. I remember switching some wires and on the alternator and the carburetor, the alternator thing, and the mechanics would go, I know you did something. I know you did something. And it's like, just tell your daddy it's not right and don't actually do it. And I'd go, okay. So, and then
But, that was
we
our
just swung by and
enjoyment.
picked up Noni.
Yeah, that was our enjoyment. You know, we just ride. You know, kids today have to be entertained. We entertained ourselves. Didn't want to stay in the house at all. You know, go, go, go. The beach.
Definitely Polly's Island.
Yeah. We'd go to the pier on Saturday and hang out there and get cooked, get fried.
We had a lot of house parties at the beach.
Yeah.
There were friends of ours whose families did have houses. And
Spring break, we'd stay at the beach.
Don't even go
Plantation
there.
Lounge, that was a big hangout, the Plantation Lounge. We could go and listen to bands and dance. That was a lot of fun.
And we were underage.
Well, the pavilion burned the year that we were old enough to go. So it's like, oh my God, what do we do?
Yeah, we never got
And
to
so we
go.
never got to go to the pavilion. So the lounge was our next best thing.
And then Bucky Watkins had a little.
Yeah, but that was
Little-
way later. That was
Oh, was it?
yeah.
That
wasn't
wasn't high
until
school?
nope. That was
Oh.
college.
Okay.
That was
Called
college.
Bucky's.
Or as some of our
But-
other friends would call it Bucky's Palace.
But we were trying to remember if there were any school dances, but we couldn't remember any.
They
Only
to
prom.
They used to have rec dances. Remember?
Just the rec
At the rec-
dances.
Down at the Boulevard, the recreation building,
East
which
Bay
they're
Park.
getting ready to demolish and renovate soon. There were dances there, but we couldn't remember any at school.
Most of those were in the fall, and many of them would be on the Saturday after the football game, because the football game would go till 10:15, so those would be the next night. So those were full weekends.
Yeah. And another thing, like for the junior, senior, the girls now, I mean, they look like models. They deck out. They do, you know, their nails, hair,
Limousines.
makeup. Yeah, limousines, drive them to there and back. And, you know, I mean, we just go buy a dress and put our own
Well,
makeup
it was
on.
and it was
that was
very
it.
special if someone had their hair
Done.
done at a salon.
Yeah. I think our parents trusted us, and I really do.
I don't remember,
I don't remember
anyone getting in any trouble. Sarah Ann there was something. What did you do? You said you did something and you.
I was very good at being invisible. I was the youngest of 4, and they were worn out by the time I got there.
I don't remember.
You were in the middle, and you were
Yeah.
the only girl, so
Yeah.
you were kind of golden child
Everybody
status.
got
and Noni was
along.
the oldest.
And we were reading last night about, on the yearbook, about the student body boycotted the lunchroom because they had taken away some of our time. Instead of having like an hour for lunch, we only had 30 minutes, and it was our principal, Harvey Rice, did that to punish the student body. There was a fight that took place at the school, and I was going,
Apparently during
I
lunch period. And
I
I'm
don't
like,
remember
"Who got in
anybody
that fight?" 'Cause
fighting,
it
or
wasn't us.
I don't remember any of that.
And we had a little break between first and
We all
second
got along.
period.
Second, third. Remember, you do 2, break, 2, lunch, last 2, 6 classes.
First and second, then a break.
a break.
15-minute break, and then
Second and third,
Second and
and then
third.
we
Okay.
had an hour lunch, and like they'd release the seniors first, and then 5
But they-
minutes later, then the juniors, and you know, it went in increments like that. So there was time. There was plenty of time to get through the lunch period. It's just
but the entire school boycotted.
But the point was that
And we won.
I don't remember anybody doing anything mean or fighting, or we all got along. Everybody was
Yeah.
happy. You know, that,
I mean, I'm sure there were people that didn't like other people, but
I don't know.
I don't ever remember seeing that.
It's a
It was
really
not
positive atmosphere at Winyah.
No
Not that I
bullying.
can remember.
I mean,
There
were
probably
always
was,
some
but
people that you didn't necessarily want to hang out with because they were not the nicest, and you just avoided them. It was kind of a, you know, okay, I'll pass on them.
I don't remember. I just remember everybody getting along. You know, just a happy time.
I'm
a
sure
good
there
time.
I'm sure there were some that didn't like others, but it's like I don't have time for that. I loved my school. Mine, especially my youngest, just wanted to be out. It was different. It's just so different. we always wanted to get to high school, and we loved every minute of being there, and there was such school spirit. And my son's experience was better, but he had a core of friends that he had made fairly early in that middle school age group, and they all went through together, very similar to us, but not so much for my daughter. By that time, it was cliquish, and there was distinctively mean girl groups and the cool boys that made life not as pleasant for some others. But that's was my personal experience. I mean, you had 3 kids, so I mean, what was Heather's?
Heather had a wonderful elementary, middle school. She and I are the same, where we are both hands-on learners and very artistic. And the bad thing about Winyah when I was there was not an art department. There was drama, typing, shop, but there was band, and I think there was chorus. I don't think there was chorus.
There was chorus.
Was that in junior
But
high,
here
though?
I was this hands-on learner, and back one of the main differences is methods of instruction are so different now. You know, catering to different learning styles, and back then it was one learning style: sit in the row, listen to the teacher lecture, and take notes and take a test. You know, that was it. And on my report card, I remember I went to the parochial school. They would always write daydreamer, 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 because I was always, you know, looking out the window, not paying attention. But one thing that I was good at was drawing. And here I was, you know, in this school that had no art department. So one of the things we had to do as cheerleaders is we had to, every week, we had to make posters. And mine were always the best. And I think the word kind of, I think, well,
And they were.
they were.
They were definitely.
Like when we were
the
looking
best.
at the yearbook, these last 2 times we got together, I'm looking and I go, I think I made those, like the little numbers that went on the Miss Winyah dresses.
Yeah.
They were like, they were
Mushrooms.
mushrooms with numbers, and I
And it
went,
had the numbers.
I think I made those. So I think the word kind of got out that Noni was real artistic. And then there was this other little sign that of career day, and it was this big poster, and it had all the listings of the career people who were going to be, and I said, I think I made that sign. You know, so I think, but one of the main things that sticks out in my mind is I had my favorite teacher was Tommy Shubrick. He taught sociology. He was African American and just the nicest guy. And he asked me, his favorite poem was the poem, children learn what they live. You know, if a child lives with hatred, he will learn to hate. And anyway, he wanted that poster. He wanted me to hand letter that poster on a big cardboard so he could hang it on his wall in his classroom. And I mean, that was just like, I was just so thrilled, you know, to be able to do that for him. And I can remember being at my house in the living room doing it. But that, pathetic, you know, stuck out to me, and I remember that. And then I remember Virginia Skinner, our science teacher, we built rockets, you know, and that was hands-on, and I remember that, of just really loving it. You know, everything else I was just like, because I just needed that hands-on and just never got it.
You would have liked
And Pat and Sara Ann, they remember all these teachers and what they did, and I'm like, oh, I don't even remember them, you know? So, but that, I think, my daughter even went to a special school that was project-based learning, you know, and the whole curriculum was based on projects they would build to learn, and it was, I would have loved that. And I actually got to teach in her school, and it was just great. You know, I just loved it. But that was a big difference, the style of how we were taught.
Yeah.
And memorization. You know, we had to memorize a lot
Rote
back then, and I
readers,
don't
rote
really remember
readers.
Heather.
Yeah.
she had like poetry contests, and she'd have to memorize a little poem. But we did a lot of memorization.
Yeah. But see, now they've got all the technology, you know, and we had nothing, you know.
It was a big day if that 8mm reel-to-reel came in the room. That was that was massive.
Yay,
And it didn't happen often either.
No,
It really didn't. I don't even think they don't even have them anymore. They had them the first couple of years I taught, but
Yeah.
I went by the wayside.
We all loved Debbie Abrams.
She was a hoot.
She was a hoot. She was fun, and she would
She
Sara
taught
Ann and I-
typing.
yeah, Sara Ann was talking last night, and she said, I can remember Debbie Abrams saying,
Little Chandler,
Little Chandler.
eyes on your copy,
Yeah.
eyes on your copy.
and she'd
Don't
come
look at
by
the
me and
keys.
go like this and
Yeah.
thump me because I'd be looking at the keyboard.
Well, and she was a
She
neighbor
was-
of mine too, and that's a big difference. You know, Georgetown is still a small school. I had the good fortune to teach in town for 16 years before teaching over at Pauley's, and I loved those kids, and we loved knowing our teachers because Debbie lived around the block from us. There were teachers that I was related to that nobody knew about, and we made sure of that. And there were, I mean, we knew the teachers. I'd gotten to know Doug Allen I had him for geography that freshman year, and that's when he got me into basketball, and then I had him for U.S. history. I had Debbie for social studies. She said that she absolutely almost had a stroke when they told her that she had to teach that class of words.
I had her for shorthand, and the only thing I remember with shorthand is how to write my name. That's it. I mean, can you imagine? Nobody uses shorthand, you know?
Well, it's all
There were just
dictation now.
lots of things that, you know, that were,
Lots of differences, but knowing knowing a lot of the teachers from here, because of course Virginia Skinner grew up here, so, and her son was in my class, and her other son was the class ahead of you guys, because that was in Wayne's class. That was maybe 7 or 2 years, I can't remember, but we knew the teachers through their children, and because they were part of our community.
And the teachers sometimes like chaperoned parties for us too.
That would not
Yeah.
happen nowadays,
And,
not if you wanted to continue to teach.
And Judy Peterson.
Oh,
was
everybody
drama,
liked
and everybody loved
Judy.
her. She was
very special.
Yeah. And tell them about the office runner. If you were lucky, you could be an office runner. I don't know that I ever was one. I don't
and
remember.
I
was
was an
not.
office runner, and Miss Nell Cribb was the secretary, and Mr. Harvey Rice was the principal. And so, you know, there was a big kind of like counter thing that you couldn't go around there. But Miss Cribb would, and I'm not going to mention any names that were with me because I'm not going to say that, but I'm going to put me in there. Every day we'd come in, and if there wasn't any running around to do, she would send us to the Delta Drugs on Front Street to get our Coke, because there weren't any
There weren't vending machines in the
vending
school.
machines there.
No drink machines,
And,
no snack machines, nothing.
And you're not supposed to leave campus unless you are signed out or a parent gets you. So anyway, me in the blue Volkswagen with the white stripe.
Every day.
Yeah, every day. And a couple of others, we'd go to the Delta and we'd get her the Coke, and we'd get us something too. And we'd come back and sit in the office and have a little snack. And we went one day in the office, and she must have gone to the restroom or something. I don't know. She wasn't there. So I just thought, well, you know, we'll just surprise her. So I got a piece of paper and I wrote, Miss Cribb, you weren't here when we got ready to go to the Delta. So we left, and we'll be back soon with your Coke. Signed our names and left it on her desk. Well, here we come back in, to the office, and who's standing there but Mr. Harvey Rice? And he picks up a paper and he goes,
The note that you wrote.
the note that I wrote. And I mean, it was like white. My face turned white, and it was like, and he goes, would you like to explain this? And anyway, long story short, back then, the assistant principal was Don Sweat, right?
Don was assistant principal part of the time, and then Mr. Alvin McKenzie.
Okay, well, at this time, Don Sweat was the assistant principal. So we had two options. You could either serve 5 days detention or get, it was either 2 or 5 whacks with the paddle. And I thought, I mean, can you imagine today? That wouldn't happen. So anyway, I took the 5 days detention and tried to get away with it with my mom and dad so they wouldn't know, and they never found out either.
But I think it's hilarious that Nell Cribb had them do that every day and didn't tell Mr. Rice.
Yeah.
And that he never knew.
He never knew.
I mean, that's
Harvey
just,
was the quiet type.
Yeah.
He had been, in
But
fact,
he got my note, and I was upset. That was for Miss Cribb.
he had been there 25 years my senior year, and we threw, as a class, we threw him secretly, planned it and everything, and surprised him with the help of some of the faculty, Harvey Rice Day for his
Aw.
25th anniversary of being principal.
That's sweet. All right, now tell him how he would make his announcements.
No, that was who you were thinking of, the one who would go the, now hear this, that was W.W. Dorr. And
That
the
was
kids all,
W.W. Dorr?
yes.
Okay.
Mr.
I thought he taught
Mr.
history.
Rice would boom, boom, boom on the thing, and then he would begin his announcements. But
Okay.
Mr. Dorr would sometimes do the announcements before. But see, Mr. Dorr, the only reason I knew that was older brothers and sisters. But a lot of the other kids nicknamed him World War Dorr
But when
because
it
he would
would-
go, now hear this, and
Then it was quiet.
Oh,
The
you-
entire school, it was
Yeah.
quiet. You listened. And we had a study hall, and Miss Hardy was the study
Vivian
hall
Hardy.
teacher. And I mean, you couldn't move your head this way, or you couldn't move your head this way, and you couldn't talk. She'd say, no talking, and it would scare me to death. But anyway, there were a few
you
like
just
that.
were not good at passing notes.
I know.
a lot more respect back then.
Yeah, we had respect for the teachers.
A lot more.
Talking back was not an option. Not an option. There were no discussions.
What the teacher said
Was
went,
what went.
and your parents went by what the teacher said. Oh gosh, that was terrible.
I was living in Charleston, and it
Unbelievable.
We were all
shocked.
stunned because we
And
loved the
hurt.
building. We loved the building. One of the neatest things was getting back into the building. The full-length lockers, those big, wide halls with the beautiful polished wood floors that if you went upstairs after school, you'd take your shoes off and get a running start, and you could literally slide halfway down the hallway on those beautifully polished floors.
And they'd wax them over Christmas.
Oh, over Christmas
Yeah.
and the holidays, and they just, it was really heartbreaking for us to see just that part of our personal history gone.
And
Just
we
gone.
didn't have air conditioning. And we had radiators, those big radiators, and if you leaned up against them, it was,
Oh, it'd wake you
gosh,
up. That or it puts you to sleep
Yeah.
in the wintertime if you got too warm in
In the
class.
spring, you could lean up against them because they were always under a window or something.
But there were massively big, wide sections of windows, and the ones on the lower part opened inwards, and the upper ones opened outward to let heat out, and the lower ones would let cool air in. And every teacher had a fan.
Yeah,
Every teacher had a
because
fan.
of the gnats that would come in.
Yeah. Yeah, no screens on those windows. Mm-mm. Not
The
at
windows
all.
would be up, and I mean, you know, it's just
Well, in the
hot as
old,
blue
in the old
blazes.
build, in the junior high building, they would go up and down. But in the high school one, you had that one that it would crank and you would
yeah,
pull it
pull it.
open, and then the upper ones had a crank, and it had a string on it, and the teachers would literally have a stick, and they would flip that little window up and push the window out, and then the string they'd pull it back in and pull it down.
Can you imagine no AC?
But we must have just been, you know, I don't remember ever being miserably hot.
Well, the ceilings were really high.
But we were
Very high.
acclimated to it. We're used to it, you know.
The ceilings were tall, and that's why you had those windows open to move that heat out.
Yeah.
So, very efficiently. They taught with the doors open when it was that hot, so that you'd get a cross breeze. Because there were windows, especially down the side halls. You remember those that would go down the right-hand side hall went to the cafeteria, and the left-hand side hall went out to what later became the annex section, where they built an additional wing, L-shaped wing back there.
And do you remember when you had to stay to the right, and
yeah.
they'd have
Hall monitor?
yeah, a hall monitor that stood like here. So if you're walking, you can't go on the left
cut
side.
across,
You got to go
gotta loop that in,
around,
yeah.
or that hall monitor would say and they were at each corner, you know. So that was another thing with the hall monitors.
It was a status symbol to get a locker on downstairs main hall. Only juniors and seniors.
And you don't see
usually.
those kind of lockers anymore. Ours were from
Full-length
floor,
lockers.
full length.
Ours were big, yeah.
I mean, you could get in them.
And people did.
To hide.
Yep, they did.
I never did. I never had.
Yeah, but you never lacked for a date. That was.
I did date, but I didn't. I always said, and this is funny, I always said, if I ever bring somebody home, like for dinner or anything, that'll be the one I marry. And it happened. But I mean, I was 26 years old when I brought one home. So.
I didn't.
But we did go out in groups, remember?
Oh, yeah.
There'd be about 5 or 6 of us in a car. And we, Polly's Island, Plantation Lounge.
Or somewhere.
And we'd go to Myrtle Beach, too, just to go to the pizza Village Inn Pizza.
We
or
were talking
something.
about that, and our parents, I can't believe, would let us drive to Myrtle Beach
At 16.
at 16 years old. I can't believe that they let us. And they apparently knew we were going. I mean, I would no more let Heather do that.
Well, it was the epitome of safety in numbers. And guys, think about it. It was not a 4-lane road.
Right.
It was a 2-lane road. There was literally, I mean, the old adage was before you went over the 2 bridges, have you been to the bathroom? Because there was not going to be another one for 30 miles.
Yeah.
Because Myrtle was 30 miles away. And the, what was it, the Wagon Wheel restaurant was the first place that you came into. There was no bypass. There was none of that. So there wasn't a place that you could kind of stop off and get into trouble, at least not that they knew of.
Yeah.
And we, you just went there, and it was the epitome of just everybody. I remember that big old station wagon of your dad's, and there had to have been at least 6 to 7 of us in
No
that car.
seatbelts.
No seatbelt.
Please. In fact, I think there was 8 of us, 3 on the back bench
Yep.
that faced outward, 3 in the middle bench facing forward, and the front seat and the driver. And down the road we'd go with the radio
you know,
just rupturing your eardrums.
we
We
had to-
never got pulled either by patrolmen. I mean, well, they'd let you go.
Yeah. Yeah. We knew most of them.
Yeah.
But we made
Lester
our own
Spears
fun.
wouldn't have let you go, but Jamie Harrelson might have. He was so much nicer.
But we had to make our own fun. You know, there was really nothing for young people to do.
We didn't have a bowling alley.
That came much later.
We would go to the Strand Theater, and there was the Palace Theater. And we were talking about the price back
Every
then.
weekend
it was
we'd
like
go to the
25
movies.
cents to go to a double feature. And those big charm suckers
Yeah.
were a nickel, and popcorn was 10 or 15
10
cents.
and drinks were 15.
Yeah. And
I mean,
Raisinets were
Compare
10.
that to today.
Yeah,
Can't
and
get
now
out of
they're
a theater without spending what?
$40.
40 bucks.
Terrible. But that was and then there was the Moose Pool too. In the
Well, and
summer.
also Sporty Sports ran the Strand Theater, and he knew every one of our parents. He knew who every one of us was. It was little Avant, little Chandler, little Caraway, you know, and it was going to get back.
Everybody looked out for each other.
Yeah. And another thing with school, back to school, then with us and now, you had to be 6 years old by November 1st to enter first grade. And I mean, here's little tiny 5-year-olds going to first grade. You know, of course, everybody's crying the first day of school and blah, blah, blah. But anyway,
I
then
was just mad.
they changed it back, and they moved it back to September 1st, which was great. And we all know as school teachers, you're not old enough, you know, to go to school when you're 5 years old. So that was a good thing.
Yeah, that's
It
what,
happened.
I mean, we had been together up through kindergarten, and Noni rolls off to school because her birthday's in October, and I'm the one that goes to another year of kindergarten because I'm
A month behind.
I'm 5 weeks after that. And it caught, and I think that's why there were several of us in 72, 73, and 74 that all kind of like, remember I said Phyllis overlapped.
Right.
She would have been a 72 and she graduated in 73, and I was 74, but was friends with everybody in 73. So
Yeah.
I don't think that I ever thought I'd really be back here. I was gone for 12 years and kind of came back on a fluke and decided, hey, this place isn't so bad as an adult. We complained about it as kids, but it was like, there's a comfort to a small town.
Yeah.
Yes, people can have long noses and want to get in your business, but there's also so many other perks. And Georgetown has very beautifully evolved over the years.
Yeah.
I had to drag this one back. And
I
drag
never
this
thought
one.
I would be a school teacher. That was just something that just happened by luck. I wanted to be a nurse. My mother worked in a hospital, and I wanted to be a nurse, but then I couldn't pass the science and the math. And then I got to college, and I saw there was a such thing as an art department. You know, I'd never knew that until I went to college, and it was like, whoa.
And she's so talented.
And so then it was my mother who wanted to be in advertising design. And my mother said, you know, Noni, what if you end up in a small town and there's no jobs for advertising? Maybe you need to get something you can fall back on. And so I got my degree to teach art, and I ended up doing that for 36 years. So you just never know. And then ended up coming back to Georgetown to live with my mom and take care of her, and then ended up, here I am living here. So I love it.
Always knew.
I just love how Georgetown is respected now for being such a historic, quaint town full of history. We didn't learn that in school. I don't remember learning anything about my town, which was a tragedy. In fact, when I went off to college and I would meet new people and they would say, "Where are you from?" I was embarrassed to say Georgetown because their comeback was always, "Oh, that's that town that stinks so bad."
Because of
From
the paper
international
mill.
paper. And it was, I mean, it just makes me sad that.
And we'd say, "That's home. That's the
Smells
smell
like
of
bread
home."
and butter. Smells like
and
bread
we
and butter.
just never really
Smell of
knew
money.
what a wonderful historic
I
we lived
did
in.
not learn until later about the contributions of Bernard Baruch and Tom Yawkey and
But I
some
think
of the
all
others.
that kind of came out after we were in school, don't you think?
If it wasn't, no, because if it wasn't,
But I mean, I don't think it was promoted.
no.
Like
well,
it is
and
now.
Yawkey always played everything down, but we would never have had a hospital in Georgetown if it weren't for Tom Yawkey. Yeah. And in fact, they wanted to name it after him, and he said, "Then I won't give you the money." Bernard Baruch would have had me outside, but not Yawkey. Yawkey was very low key, very, very low key, and our parents took it for granted because they were accustomed to it, and that's also a big difference between that generation and our generation. We freely talked to our kids about different things, and it was, this is what you do. This is where you were told how to do or what to believe and behave, whereas we're much more open with our kids. We just took it for granted what we were told.
It was fun.
Our favorite lunch.
Oh, yes, our favorite lunch. We were talking about that. Go ahead.
And one of
Noni.
the things another thing that's different today than it was back in the day is the kids today have all sorts of choices in their cafeteria. It's just mind-blowing. But we just had one thing, right?
Lunch menu was the lunch
just
menu.
had-
Big old
and
pot, and they
You had
slop it on your tray.
2 lines, one on each side of the cafeteria.
Everybody went in,
and
came
we just
out.
everybody got the same thing. And we were talking about what was your favorite lunch, and Pat
We
and
said
I,
it together.
We both loved the rice with what was it?
Pinto
No, they were like
beans,
lima
lima
beans.
beans.
White lima.
White
and I was
lima
like,
beans
oh,
and
gosh.
rice and
so
cinnamon buns.
Sarah Ann's over
I was
here
like
going,
gagging.
They would cook the lima beans, the white limas, till
Well,
they
it
were
made
just
this real thick
It was
gravy,
like
and
a
it's like-
thick gravy, and I'm sure it was
White
full
gravy.
of bacon, but it was so
Oh,
good.
gosh, I
It's
could
my
have eaten
favorite
shit.
lunch.
And then we'd
I was
unroll
gagging.
those cinnamon rolls, and the
Cinnamon
best part
buns as
was
big
the
as your head.
inside.
They were huge, and everything was homemade. Hot dog buns were homemade. Hamburger buns were homemade. Yeast rolls were all made in-house. Everything was made there, and if you had a good cafeteria manager, she was as well respected as the principal.
But listen to this. We liked the lima beans and the cinnamon rolls. And so Noni and I looked at Sara Ann and said, "Well, what do you like? What do you like?"
It's turkey and dressing, and you got it like twice a year. So it's
At
like
Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Oh, and also too, there was a smoking area
Oh, I forgot
at the high
about that.
school, and you, of
had
course,
to have a permit.
none of us, were
None
in
of
the
us had a
smoking
permit.
area.
I was
None
scared.
of us
I was
had a
scared to go.
permit.
Your parents
You
had
had
to
to-
sign for you to be in the smoking area.
You didn't
But,
even go through
I
that
mean, that-
smoking
can
area.
you believe
it was
that?
between two buildings.
It was right there by the
You
cafeteria.
two
wasn't it?
didn't. You two didn't, but
Yeah.
I never had a smoking permit. That is
I
not
don't know
to
that
say
they
I
do that
never
in high
smoked at
schools, do
school.
they?
No.
Oh,
you
it's
have to be
banned.
21 to smoke.
It's a state law. It's banned on all public school campuses are smoke free.
Yeah. But anyway,
Any public
that we
supported
couldn't believe
campus
when we
is
thought
smoke-free.
about that.
And another thing that changed, I don't know if this is kind of off the wall, but when we were in school, the drinking age was 18. And there was no age for smoking. They had cigarette machines, and you'd put 35 cents in and pull, and the cigarettes would
Not in
come
the
out.
school. They didn't have.
Not,
they
not
didn't
in
have.
school. But anyway, that's unreal now because the drinking age is 21, you know, and then
You have to be 18.
you have to be.
18. You have to be 18 to buy lottery tickets and to buy cigarettes.
I thought you had to be 21 to buy cigarettes.
I think
18?
it's 18.
18? But
I'm
you have
not
to show
sure.
an ID.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If
But I
you're-
thought that was, you know, they put the hammer down on that. I just remember that drinking age was 18, and I thought, wow, you know, and now it's 21.
we were all in the boomer generation after World War II, and most of our parents had had some connection to the war, and the attitude was, if you're old enough to go off and fight for your country, you are old enough to smoke or drink. And as usual, if my parents said it was okay, then it was okay. So, I mean, the teachers, I remember a couple of our teachers who smoked in class.
Oh, yes.
They
We were
smoked.
laughing about that
Yeah, I
last
had
night.
one teacher, I gave him an ashtray for Christmas because I wanted that. I wanted that A. I wanted to exempt that exam. You could exempt an exam if you had a 90 or above. And your mission every year was to exempt your exams because then
Yeah.
you got out of school early.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest adjustments for us was when they combined the schools. Well, not really combined. They made Winyah College Prep, and Howard was vocational. And then, when Winyah burned down, then we were
Combined again.
combined
It was
again, and then
Georgetown High.
we had to make big adjustments. You know, it was big adjustments for that. So, but anyway, I think the biggest adjustment was that Winyah was the college prep, and Howard was the vocational, because that forced you to pick between.
Well, yeah, and there were kids that
Some had a chip on the shoulder about, okay,
And-
why
and
do I
there
have
were-
to go there, or why do I have to go there?
and there were kids, there were black and white kids that were in school together through elementary school, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now there's a guideline for this? Because, I mean, integration took place when we were in elementary school, so there were kids we had known in school all this time.
Yeah.
And then there were like regulations for it, and you're like,
Yeah.
it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to us.